What if, on the night of your wedding rehearsal, you stumbled onto a secret so dark it could shatter every relationship you hold dear? One bride, one desperate escape, and a truth too dangerous to reveal. Tonight, as families gather and old wounds resurface, someone will disappear, and nothing will ever be the same. Before the truth unravels, tell me, what would you do if you found out a secret that could ruin your own future? Would you run, or would you stay and face the fallout? Comment below, I want to know your answer, and where you are watching from. The air inside the upscale Bellevue Country Club was thick with expensive perfume, highly reflective silver, and the parched glint of perfection. Jane Archer, 28, stood before a floor-to-ceiling mirror, a vision in ivory silk and dainty lace. Her bridesmaids-to-be, ordered about by her staunchly loyal best friend Becky, fluttered about her, arranging flowers and securing the diamond brooch Bridget, Jane's mother, had worn years before. "Jane, sweetie, you're ethereal," Bridget breathed, blotting at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Her eyes were shining with pride, but beneath, the same old, wary concern, just like I always imagined. "Thanks, Mom," Jane breathed, trying for a smile that didn't quite reach her lips. Her introspection was graceful. The smooth sweep of her throat, the soft bend of her cheek, but also fragile, quiet tension gripping her jaw. She was the perfect symbol of the society bride married to the city's catch. James Harrington, 32, tech mogul, charming, philanthropic, good-looking enough to grace magazine covers. He waited downstairs, radiant with confidence. Charming investors, politicians, and his stern, distant father, Williams Harrington. 3 months, Becky bubbled, tightening her grip on Jane's hand. "Can you picture? Soon you'll be Mrs. Harrington, living in that ridiculous mansion, hosting charity functions." She trailed off, noticing the shadow that fell across Jane's face. "Hey, you're okay? Wedding nerves?" Jane tightened back, a little more firmly than she had to. "Just a lot. You know, James. Everything must be perfect. Perfect like the facade he put on," she thought, the familiar knot of anxiety twisting in her belly. James was charming, too easily so. He remembered names, bombarded her with over-the-top gifts, and spoke of their future in sweeping movie style. But occasionally, in glimpses of weakness, his charm struck her as an act. Too smooth, and the silences, the late night without reason, the way his hand might involuntarily close on her arm if she provoked him. Secrets. Both of them, she was sure, kept them. Hers bruised like a lead weight across her heart. James opened the door and stepped in, radiating charisma. "Darling." He swept her into a veteran hug, planting a kiss on her cheek. "You look beautiful. Absolutely perfect." He looked her over appraisingly, approvingly, as though she were some prized purchase. Ready to dazzle them downstairs? Dad's got the mayor cornered again. He smiled, but it didn't include his cold blue eyes. Williams Harrington stood over the large piano, a tall, authoritative figure radiating old money and boredom. He nodded briefly at Jane, his gaze only for the dynamics of power working in the room. Standing next to him was Paul, James's cousin and number 2. Paul was smooth, observing, always hanging close to James, intensifying his cousin's presence with fawning smiles and eyes that observed everything. And Patrick, James's small brother, less rowdy, less loud. Patrick leaned against the bar with a drink. His eyes often traveled to Jane, warm and concerned in their look, and appeared startlingly genuine beside James's shiny warmth. Jane never found that she felt an unusual sense of comfort around Patrick, a calm, mutual understanding that unsettled her. Just need a minute of air, James, Jane said, stepping away quietly. Becky, come on. James's smile creased up nearly imperceptibly. Don't take long. The photographer needs us for the sunset shots on the balcony. On the still balcony out over the manicured golf course, the light of late afternoon felt suddenly leaden. Becky, Jane whispered, her voice trembling. I can't breathe. Whoa, Janie, what's wrong? Becky gripped her shoulders, her bright good cheer weighed down by gravity. Is James okay? Did he do something? It's not James, it's everything. This wedding. It's a gilded cage. And… Jane hesitated, the secret bubbling inside her, ready to erupt. There's something. Something huge, Becky. Something I've never told anyone. Tell me, Becky urged. Whatever it is, I'm here. Jane opened her lips, the words piling up on her tongue. Words that would shatter the perfect facade. And then she caught sight of Paul watching them from the inside, a smile twitching on his lips. James was looking too, his expression unreadable. Fear, cold and sharp, crept over her. James's influence, James's links, James's urgent requirement for control. What would he do if he found out? What would his secret instruct him to do? I can't, Jane panted, tears brimming in her eyes. Not here. Not now. I need time. I need to think. Becky's face was white. Jane, you're scaring me. Don't do something dumb. Jane brushed away tears, clenching herself into control. I won't. I just need room. Tell Mom I'm going to the ladies' room. I'll be back for the pictures. She offered Becky a quick kiss on the cheek, eyes pleading for understanding she couldn't verbalize. Becky stood frozen as Jane elbowed back inside, away from the bathroom, but toward a side entrance to the valet stand. Her heart was thudding against her ribs like a caged bird. The weight of her secret. A secret tied up with James's own terrible secret, and a bond she couldn't escape, was crushing her. The day of the wedding, it seemed, was a death sentence. She couldn't proceed. Not yet. Not without knowing the truth. She flagged a cab. Just go, she whispered roughly. Away from here. Panic came when Jane failed to come back. James's suave mask broke, disclosing a chilling, icy fury that lay underneath. Get her. He snarled at Paul, his voice low and menacing. She wouldn't have just walked out. But the unspoken terror clung to the air. Unless she knows. Bridget was sobbing, clinging to Becky. Where is she? What occurred? Was she distressed? Becky, caught by Jane's tears and terror of James, shook her head, her own tears flowing. She just needed some air, Mrs. Archer. She said she'd be back in a minute. Williams Harrington merely sighed and complained into his whiskey of unreliable stock. Patrick endured it all. Pale, faced, his knuckles white around his glass. He'd noticed the glint in Jane's eye. He knew something was terribly wrong. Police were called. Missing persons reports were made. James acted the distraught fiancé to perfection on the cameras. The handsome businessman deprived of his pink bride. He was making a large offer, mobilized his vast resources, and gave tearful interviews. But behind closed doors, things differed quietly. Rumor, skillfully seeded by Paul, circulated. Jane had cold feet. Jane was an instance of instability. Jane might have been dating someone else. James discreetly redirected the inquiry, asking questions about Jane's state of mind, evading any further investigations. Bridget would not let it. She knew her daughter. The fear she saw in Jane's eyes was not cold feet. It was dread. Becky employed her keepership but simmered with apprehension in trying to trace back Jane's trail, reaching dead ends. Patrick made veiled probes of his own, his alarm growing into horror. He remembered an awkward conversation weeks before with Jane, in which she had spoken vaguely of things not being as they seemed, about James. He remembered James's astounding rage when he'd once seen Patrick and Jane laughing easily together. Weeks turned into a month. Then 2. Public interest waxed. James, never dropping the dismayed fiancé act completely, began to focus again on his company. He met with investors and appeared at award ceremonies. The wedding trinkets were pushed onto a shelf along the way. To everyone outside of his immediate circle, it was a tragic mystery. For Bridget and Becky, a waking nightmare. For Patrick, a nagging fear that his brother was doing something bad. Exactly 5 months to the day after she had vanished, a taxi pulled up outside Bridget Archer's tiny bungalow. It was on a rainy evening, the streets glistening. The door opened, and out stepped Jane. She was barely recognizable. The otherworldly loveliness was clouded by a profound weariness inscribed into every contour of her face. She was thinner, paler, her eyes a wellspring of suffering, and patiently gained strength. Cradled snugly in her arms, all swaddled in a pale pink blanket, was a baby. Bridget, her heart jumping at the doorbell, froze. Her hand sprang to her lips. Jane? Oh God! Jane! She staggered towards her daughter, holding her in a strangling hug, the tears streaming down her face. You're alive. You're home. But a baby? Her gaze dropped to the little sleeping face. Jane sank onto the doorstep, exhaustion sweeping over her. Mom, she whispered, her voice raw. Her name is Lily. She's mine. Becky, who heard Bridget's shout, rushed in. Her surprise was the same as Bridget's. Jane, thank God. But a baby? How? The story came out in fractured, tearful sentences. The cab had taken her to a terminal. She'd paid cash. She'd fled to a small, anonymous town hundreds of miles away, a place James would never think she'd run to. She'd rented a small apartment, scared, using an assumed name, and she'd discovered that she was pregnant. The stress, the fear. I didn't even know at first, Jane confessed, rocking Lily gently. When I found out, I was frightened, but I knew I couldn't come back. Not to James. Not then. I knew what he'd do if he felt trapped, if his spotless reputation was ever at risk. His secret. It's dangerous, Mom. And I had mine. She looked down at Lily, love and remorse struggling in her gaze. I had to protect her. I had to leave until she was safe in my arms, until I had the strength to face him. Bridget and Becky listened, shocked and bereaved. Jane outlined James's domination, his subtle rages, and his need for absolute control. She hinted at his business deals across moral lines. Deals Paul had facilitated, and Williams ignored. She spoke of her own secret, not the baby, but why she was so desperate to leave prior to the wedding. A secret linked to James's real nature, and a moment of realization that had given a horrific glimpse of reality. And what of the father? Becky asked quietly, though already something was occurring to her, fueled by the manner in which Jane had, at times, looked at Patrick. Jane blinked her eyes, another burst of tears falling. It's complicated, but James must never know. He would. She could not finish the sentence, the terror still immediate. The headlines exploded. Vanished bride returns with baby, they bellowed. James Harrington, stunned in dismay, witnessed his painstakingly restored reputation laid low. The tale of the loquacious runaway bride was quickly eclipsed by salacious gossip-mongering. Who was the father? Why had she run away? Was James a thug? James showed up at Bridget's place within hours, accompanied by Paul and a top-level lawyer named Mr. Roberts. His charm was replaced by a scary, repressed anger. He hardly looked at Jane, immediately zooming in on the baby in Bridget's arms. So, he said, his voice dangerously low. This is the surprise. He didn't even bother to ask Jane if she was okay. My lawyers have advised me that, given your documented instability and your voluntary traumatic vanishing, you are obviously not competent to care for this child. He waved his hand at Lily in a cursory way. And given the timing, there is a strong likelihood this child is mine. Hence, the Harrington family will be seeking immediate custody. Subject to DNA results, of course. Jane witnessed the blood drain from her face. Your child? James, you have to know. That's impossible. We never, not in months leading up to when I left. The unspoken reason hung so heavily. His secret. The thing which had driven in the wedge. James's eyes glinted with malice. Do I? You disappeared into thin air, Jane. You lied, you hid. Who knows what you did, with whom you were. The courts will hear of a demure woman who abandoned her life and responsibilities. I am James Harrington, pillar of society, wealthy, stable. Who do you think they're going to believe? He stepped forward. Hand over the child, Jane. Now, or this will get very nasty. You don't have anything. No money, no reputation left. I will bury you. Bridget stepped forward, interposing herself between James and Jane and Lily. Get out of my home, James Harrington. Paul sneered. Mr. Roberts opened his briefcase. Mrs. Archer, we have the preliminary petition for custody here. We advise you to cooperate. It was when Patrick pushed past Paul, his angry mask. He hadn't come with James. He'd come by himself, willing to do anything to see Jane. He heard James's threat. Stop it, James! Patrick's voice cut through the air like a knife. He moved forward to stand alongside Jane, taking on a protective stance. You're not going to take that baby. James whirled on his brother, his own anger finally breaking. Leave me alone, Patrick. This has nothing to do with you. Or is it? His eyes blazed, flicking between Patrick and Jane, a growing, sickening suspicion twisting his face. You? And her? Is that all? The hatred in his voice was palpable. Jane flinched, hugging Lily more tightly. Patrick did not contradict her. He looked at his brother, his anger seething. This isn't about me or Jane. This is about you frightening her, trying to steal her baby. Do you think your wealth and position make anything possible? Including people's lives? Including a baby? The battle was electric, the tension suspended in the air like static charge. Years of repressed rage, and the electric release of Patrick's loyalty squarely with Jane. James caught it. The silent connection, the mutiny. His carefully constructed world was unraveling. His secret was out. His control vanishing. Get him out, Paul. James snarled. Jane gasped in first, her voice sharp and crisp, ringing above the chaos. Go, James. All of you. You will not touch my daughter, and you are not her father. She gazed directly at Patrick, a spasm of intense gratitude and something more profound flashing between them, and then again at James with burning resolve. I ran to save her from you, from the life you would have made us live, from the lies. I have evidence, James, of your secrets, of why I was so scared. If you try to take Lily, if you try to destroy me, I will reduce your perfect world to ashes. I swear it. Silence descended, thick and oppressive. James looked at her, his eyes beholding not the demure woman he thought he had under his thrall, but a fire-hardened mother ready to fight with nothing to lose. He saw the unwavering devotion in Patrick's stance, the defiance in Bridget and Becky's look. He saw Mr. Roberts hesitate, calculating the charged tension. James Harrington, for the first time in his privileged life, was checkmated. His smooth facade was stripped away, and the ugly, selfish heart that lay beneath was revealed. He wagged his finger at Jane, then at Patrick. This isn't over, he snarled, the threat dripping with malice. Not by a long shot. That child will be a Harrington. He turned round on his heel and strode out, Paul trotting after him. Mr. Roberts nodded curtly and followed him, leaving the petition on the hall table. The door crashed to the fragile peace that followed, unbroken only by Lily's small whimper. Jane fell back on the sofa, trembling, the adrenaline draining away, leaving raw fatigue. Patrick knelt beside her, his hand hesitating, wanting to console but unsure how. "She's beautiful, Jane," he whispered, his eyes on the baby. Jane looked down at Lily, and then over at Patrick, tears welling up. "She is, and she's safe. At least, for now." She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. "Thank you, Patrick. For not leaving me." The battle lines had been drawn. The gorgeous surprise, baby Lily, was the center of a war. A fight between a mother with desperate love and dangerous truths, and a powerful man who was used to getting his way, whose secrets could be the very thing that would destroy him. The perfect wedding was long gone. Today, the fight was over a future. And the truth, no matter how evil, had to be told. The urban myth wasn't just that of a missing bride, but of the catastrophic overlap of secrets, power, and savagery. The awful, savage power of a mother's love. The world was waiting. And Jane Archer, now no longer the refined society bride but a warrior forged in the shadows, was finally prepared to fight back. Tell me, if you were in Jane's shoes, would you go back and face everyone? Or disappear for good? Type your answer in the comments, and if you want to see what happens next, don't forget to subscribe for part 2. Let's see this to the end.